Good day, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here today for our PSA training. It's great to have you all here to learn a little bit about the PSA module of Atera. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gila, and I'm a Technical Customer Success Manager here at Atera. And today we're going to mainly be going through the PSA module, which is predominantly ticketing and billing. For those of you who are not so familiar with the platform, Atera is broken down into two main components. On one side, we have the RMM, which is the remote monitoring and the management. And on the other side, we have the PSA, which is everything that is more customer facing, including ticketing, billing, invoicing, reports, and so on. So today we're mainly going to focus on the PSA. And I would definitely suggest for those of you who have not already attended the RMM webinar to join that training in conjunction with this, and that will really give you a good holistic view of the platform. Now, before we begin, there are just a few disclaimers that I want to make. One thing that I want to say is that we are coming with the assumption that when you already have your customers set up within Atera. So you have your customers set up, you have your contacts set up, and everything that we're going to do is going to be based off of that and the way that you have that set up. Great. So we have a packed agenda for today. First, we're going to go through some of the main steps in getting set up to start using the PSA within Atera. Following that, we'll take a deeper dive into ticketing within Atera. Afterwards, we'll take a look at our invoicing and billing. Then we'll take a look at some of the cool automations that you can do, how you can really streamline your workflow, and also the different customizations within Atera. And finally, we'll end off with some of the reports that we have, which are specifically relevant to our PSA module. And as in all of our trainings, we end off with a live Q&A. There is a Q&A section in this webinar in the bottom, so you can feel free to post any questions that you have in the Q&A section, and then we will get to them at the end. Great. So we're going to dive right into a live demo. I will put my camera off for the demo, and then I will put it back on when we get to the live Q&A. Great. So, oh, no. Okay. So for those of you who are not familiar, this over here is the Atera platform. This is the main dashboard. And as I mentioned earlier, we are coming with the assumption that you have your customers set up. So as you can see, I clicked on customers, and over here I have different customers. Within that, I have contacts. So yeah, again, it's important to get that all set up. Now, before you start actually using the ticketing or you start billing your customers, there's a number of other setups that you want to do to ensure that you're ready to go. The first one of those will be under admin. So the main thing that we want to first set up is our email for email ticketing. Now, if I click on admin, email settings, what I see at the top over here is an automatically generated unique email address that is provided to you, which is unique to your Atera account and is provided to you upon the opening of your Atera account. And any email which comes from your contacts to that account will automatically open a ticket within the system. So for those of you who have never used ticketing before and you want to have everything in one place, essentially you want all your tickets to be forwarded to that email address. But of course, some people who are already using an existing ticketing inbox or already have an existing ticketing address, maybe you want a personalized ticketing email with your own domain, you can set up a primary support address. What does that mean? That means that if you set up email forwarding from within this inbox, so you will have to log into that inbox separately and set up email forwarding, and you put it here as your primary support address, then any tickets which your end users or your customers or your employees send to this email address will then be forwarded to the Atera email address and a ticket will be created. In addition to that, depending on which package you have, you can add a different amount of additional support addresses. So that number will vary according to the package you have. So if you have more than one tickets queue, perhaps you have one queue which deals specifically with certain facilities or certain hardware. Maybe you're running an operation where you also have a sales queue and you also want those tickets to come through to Atera. You can go ahead and add additional support addresses over here. And then at a later stage, you'll be able to create ticket automations based on these additional support addresses. And also you'll be able to create different ticket views based on these addresses. So you will again have to go into those inboxes and set up the email forwarding from these addresses to the main Atera address. But that is what those additional addresses are for. Now, another thing that you can do is select to auto-create a new contact on an incoming email. Now, one mechanism that Atera has in place to prevent a lot of spam building up within your ticketing is that only emails which are registered as contacts within Atera will a ticket be created when sent to this email address. So if you auto-create a new contact on an incoming email, what you're saying is that if someone sends you an email, then it will create a contact from that email address if there's not already a contact, and then a ticket will be generated. And if you set that on, and again, that you can then classify that contact as a customer based on their email domain. And you're also able to send them a welcome email or any email that you want, really. You can go ahead and create a template. So for any newly created contact, you can send them an email template, which you can create yourself with any relevant information. And the last thing that you want to do is customize your SMTP settings. Now, when you are responding to your customers' tickets or to your end users' tickets, by default, the response will come from noreply@atera.com when you're responding through the platform. So for that reason, we suggest that you customize your SMTP settings to ensure that the email response that you're sending will come from your own address or from whichever address you choose, and will not come from noreply@atera.com. So that's what you can do over there. Great. So now you've gone ahead and you've set up your email ticketing, but that's not all. There's a little bit more setup that I want to show you before we get started. Now, the next thing that you want to set up, especially those who are working with a lot of end users or a lot of customers, is your customer portal. Now, this can be accessed in one of two ways. The first way that it can be accessed is straightforward by anyone with a URL through a URL by anyone with an internet connection, and that is simply under admin customer portal. You'll see you may already have an auto-generated portal domain name, but you can change this to match your domain and also add an SSL certificate to make it secure. And then really just from that URL, anyone with an internet connection can access the portal. So you can see that I have it over here, but if I just put in that URL, the customer portal will open. Now we will come back to the customer portal. I want to show you another way that you can access it. Another way that can be accessed specifically by Windows devices is through a help desk agent. Now, it is only available, the help desk agent is only available on Windows devices. So to demonstrate this for you, I have remoted into a Windows device just to show you what it looks like, as I am using a Mac. And this is the end user device. I can simply click here, set up the help desk agent, and the customer from right over here can go ahead and either manage their tickets or create a new ticket, and then they will be directed to the customer portal. This one over here has not yet been customized. It's not branded yet, but this is essentially what the unbranded customer portal looks like. So that is how another way that the customer portal can be accessed. But of course, you want to set this up for your customer before you get started. And what the customer portal is it's a way for them to see all their tickets. And included in that, you can also set up a knowledge base. Now, the knowledge base is a great place for you to put any frequently asked questions, any instructions, how to carry out certain things, really just a way to help your customers help themselves and reduce the number of questions that they're asking you by putting all the necessary information there. Now, you can set up the knowledge base that the customer will access by going to admin, knowledge base. And over here, you can create different categories, different sections, and different articles. Each of the different categories can be assigned to a certain customer depending on your needs. So that's a great way for you to really customize the customer portal for your customers to access it. Now, the last thing that I want to show you, every one of your customers, doesn't matter if they're coming in from a URL, they will have to log into the customer portal. And if they're logging in, this is what it will look like at first when they click on it. So you're probably asking, where can they get these credentials? So from within the platform, you do maintain control of these. If you go to the customer, under customer, Worddocs coding, and you can select the relevant customer, you'll see over here on the side under the customer, you have their portal username as well as their password. And you can go ahead and you can change this password, you can edit it. Additionally, once they use their email address, they can also click forgot password. And that's how you can give your customer access to the customer portal. The last thing that I want to show you is how you can activate the help desk agent on their end. So as you saw earlier, we remoted into the device and there was that little icon that the user clicked. The way you can activate this so that they can access the customer portal is by going to their device. Once you're already monitoring it. And then from that device, I'm just looking for the one I remoted into, you simply click manage, more tools, help desk agent, and activate. And then on their end user, they will have that icon. Great. So you've set up your knowledge base and your customer portal. The next thing that you want to set up is your business hours. Now, this is very important specifically for those who are working with SLAs, when you're also going to be billing your customers. And just in general, for customer service, there's some automations that you can create based on these business hours. And so for that reason, you do want to get these set up. So you can have a number of different calendars and create different automations or create, and each one of them could be relevant for different contracts or different SLAs that you have. But you go ahead, you add a calendar. Let's call this today's business hours. You can add a description. And then you can really go ahead and select whichever day you want that will be relevant for that calendar. You can, of course, change the time. Maybe one day you only work until 5. So you can really go ahead and create that calendar of hours that you're working. Once you've set up your business hours, the next logical step would be to set up your contracts. Now, that was under admin. I did that quite quickly, so I'll go back on that. That was under admin contracts. Now, over here, what you can see is a list of different contracts that you have with all your customers. Of course, you can also filter if you want to see specific contracts or maybe the contracts for a specific customer. But what you can also do, if you perhaps don't have a lot of customers or the customers that you have, you work with the same standard agreement, you can create one contract. And then for that existing contract, you can go ahead and duplicate it, clone it. You can just type in a new name and select another relevant customer. But of course, you can also create a new contract at any point. So I will go ahead and show you how to do that. You select new contract. You can apply it to a certain customer. So let's choose our customer, Aloe. What we'll call it is Aloe 2022 contract. And then we can go ahead and choose the start date and the end date. You can choose at any point if this contract is active. You can assign this as a default contract. That means that any ticket which is opened up by this a contact who is part of this customer, this contract will automatically be applied to that ticket. Every customer can only have one default contract. And you can also choose if the contract is taxable, and you can go ahead, add any tax that you want or add a new tax. a new tax rate, depending on your needs. Then you can also select the contract type. So we have some examples of standard contracts, for example, a retainer or a flat fee. Perhaps you're also working on an hourly rate. Alternatively, maybe you're working on a one-time project for a customer, so you want to go ahead and set up a one-time fee contract or for a project or an hourly rate. Or maybe you're working in a block format, so either with block hours or block money. So for example, you have a block hours agreement, you work 20 hours a month. You can choose if you want to roll over the remaining balance based on your billing period. And then you can go ahead and add your hourly rate. You can add any new rate that you want by clicking add rate. And you can also select an overage rate if you go overtime. And then you can also select your SLA. So this could be the SLA for the time taken to resolve the ticket. It could be for the time for the first response. You can go ahead and select the SLA, which I will show you how to set up. And then you can add any relevant notes. So you can say here, valid until December 2022, and then we'll renew until 2025. So really anything that you want over there. I will just show you where you can set up your SLAs. That is under admin, service level agreements. You can create a number of different SLAs and then add that to the relevant contract. So as you saw, we set up our contract. It was our LO 2022 contract with all the relevant information. We can also find this by clicking on the customer and then going to the contract. And there we can see all the contracts that we have open for this customer. We can, of course, also delete anything which isn't relevant. And you can also see that which contract has been selected as the default. Okay. Next, what we want to do is, okay, so we've done all of our setup. Let me take a step back. We've done all of our setup, and now we're ready to start opening tickets. Now, there's a number of different ways that tickets can be opened through Atera. This can be done either by your end user or by you as the technician. So I'm going to go through some of these ways. First, and most obviously, a ticket can be opened manually from within the platform by selecting new ticket. And this bar over here is always visible in the platform. So at any point, if your customer calls you, you get a phone call from them and you want to open a ticket according to that, as long as you have Atera open, you can just go ahead and create a new ticket. In addition to that, a ticket can be created from an alert. Now, this can be done manually and automatically, and I'll show you how to do both. And I also want to point out that this is really a great way to be proactive and really provide that extra value to your customers, to solve issues perhaps when your customer doesn't even know that it's happened. And even more than that, this is really one of the key benefits of having a combined RMM and PSA solution. You have the monitoring going on one hand, an issue occurs, you go ahead, you resolve the issue for the customer, and now you're able to keep track of this, to open a ticket about it, to bill the customer. So really it's very beneficial. So you can go to alerts, and to open a ticket manually from an alert, you can go to any one of your alerts and simply click create ticket. You then have the option to either create a new ticket or assign it to an existing ticket if you already have maybe a widespread issue. And if you create a new ticket, you'll see that all the information from that alert based on the customer, the contact, the contract, the ticket title, and the description, it's all already been inputted into the ticket. But of course, if you want to be even more proactive than this, you also have the option to create these tickets automatically from alerts. So under admin alerts, you can go ahead and toggle on automated ticket creation. And this means that for any critical or warning alerts based on the threshold profiles that you've set up, you can go ahead and select whichever customers you want. And for any critical or warning alerts from the selected customers, a ticket will then be opened in your queue automatically. Very proactive way to to assist your customers. Tickets, as we mentioned earlier, can also be opened through email, simply by emailing that email address or your main support address once you've set up the forwarding. Tickets can be opened from the portal by the customer. Email can be done by you or the customer. They can be opened up by the customer when they click add ticket. We also have on our 2 higher tier packages, on our growth and our power plans, we have the option for chat. So you can find that under any device, or you can also do it from within a ticket. If the device is online, you can go ahead and click manage, more tools, chat, and you can start a chat. This is, again, only available on our 2 higher tier packages, our growth and our power plan. And it's also only available when the end user's device is Windows. But I can go ahead and start this chat, have a conversation with the customer. And once the chat is finished, a ticket will be created from that chat. Okay, and then the last way, so the customer portal and also through the help desk agent that we saw earlier. One more thing that I will show you that we have is an API. So you can also use this to open a ticket and in general, just to export some data out of Atera if necessary, or import anything into Atera. We do have documentation available in the platform. So we're not going to go into too much detail, but you can look at that if that's of interest to you. It is available. Great, so let's go ahead and open a ticket. So as I said, we'll do this manually. We'll click on new ticket. We'll select a customer. As you can see, it automatically assigned the default contract, but I can go ahead and change that if I want. I can select a contact, and then I'm going to provide the ticket title. For example, printer not working. I can assign a technician, ticket priority, impact incident. Then we have some custom fields. Product family is a field that can be edited. And in addition to that, I will show you later how you can add more custom fields. So if there's any other information that you want to be available in tickets, you can add that using custom fields. And then over here, you'll add the description. Printer on 9th floor, not working. You can attach any files or any pictures if necessary. You can also choose to schedule this ticket. That means that the ticket will either pop up at a later stage, or if you want to set any maintenance or update reminders, you can schedule this ticket to open on a recurring frequency. And those tickets will also show up in a different view and will not contribute to the SLA until they are open. And finally, if you notice, this has been registering the time taken to create this ticket. So for those of you who are also billing their customers for this time, you can simply unselect that if it's not relevant. And once you've filled out all the relevant information, you can go ahead and add this ticket. Great. Now, this has redirected us to the main ticket page. As you can see, there are 2 main queues over here. The first queue that we have is tickets which are opened on a once-off basis to be dealt with immediately or as soon as possible. And the other main queue that we have is the scheduled tickets, which we saw earlier. And again, this could be for tickets which you only want to appear at a later date, or maybe for some sort of reminder. But of course, you can also filter this even more to see the tickets that you want to see. So for this, we have over here our filters. Now, assume that you've been out of office for the last 2 weeks, and you come back and you want to see all the tickets that are still open from the time that you were away. So you can go to filters. You can select all tickets with the status open. The creation date was in the last 2 weeks when you were out of office. You can add any other filters that you want. And then you can go ahead and save this view. So we'll save it as a new view. We'll call it vacation tickets. And we'll go ahead and save that. And then we're only seeing all tickets that are open from the last 2 weeks. And we can at any point go ahead and access this view. Now, of course, you can really play around with this to get the granularity that you need. Maybe you want to create a queue of all tickets which are high priority. So everything that's high priority, you can save that view as high priority. And then at any point, you're able to access that high priority queue of tickets. So let's clear those filters and see all the tickets that we have. There are a few other things I want to point out on this page. First of all, you can see the assigned technician over here. And you can go ahead and change that at any point. You can also change the priority of the ticket right here from on the page. You can change the activity status. So if the ticket's been read or unread or waiting customer response or waiting the technician response, perhaps the customer responded and now it's waiting for a response from the technician. You could also filter about all the tickets which require that response. And we also have the ticket status. So some of these are default fields and some of these you can customize, and I'll show you that later. But you can also change that from right over here on this page. Then we go into the ticket. Now, the first thing I will point out for those who noticed, at the top over here, a ticket timer automatically started. Now, you can configure this to either start automatically or to start manually when you select start and you decide that you're going to start working on the ticket. But if you've configured it to start automatically, it's a really great way to ensure that as soon as you start working on the ticket, you're tracking your time spent, and you can really ensure that all your time is being tracked so you can bill for all your time. And it's the best way to just maximize your revenue and ensure that none of your work is getting lost. At any point, you can also edit the time entries if necessary, and you can also stop this timer. And then when you come back into the ticket, it will restart. Over here, again, you have this technician, you can change it, the agent, and you can assign a new one, the contract, and you can also change it. You also have the option to respond as a public reply or an internal note. What is the difference? A public reply is just a regular response to the ticket. So you could say something to the customer like, I'm checking, and respond. But maybe you want to make a note for yourself. Maybe if you're more than one person on the team, you want to leave a note to one of your teammates. And for that, you would use an internal note. So reminder to check printers also on 10th floor, for example. And then you can go ahead and save that note, and the customer will not see that. The end user will not see that. That will be just something that's available to whoever has access to this ticket within Atera. So other technicians on your account or only to yourself. Again, you can add any time entries. Some other actions that you can do is merging tickets if you have duplicates. You can delete any tickets if necessary. You can, again, on our 2 higher tier packages, you can start a chat directly from within the ticket. You can also create a calendar event. We have an integration both with Google Calendar and Outlook, where what it will do is just pull the details from the ticket into a calendar event on your calendar. Give that a minute. I don't know why it's taking so long. And then what you can do is maybe set some time up to work on this ticket. You can invite anyone else if you want to discuss it further or have a meeting about it. But this will really just pull in that information directly into the calendar event. And again, you can add any products and expenses. So again, you have the regular time that you're charging your client for working on the ticket, but maybe you purchase something on a once-off basis for them. For example, you got them a new printer, so you want to charge them for it. You can go ahead and add that as a product. You can also add any expenses. So say, despite the very high price of gas at the moment, so I wouldn't wish an on-site visit on anyone, you can go ahead and if you did conduct an on-site visit, you can go ahead and charge per gas. Again, you can add all these expenses and all these rates. And you can add the quantity. So if you traveled, for example, 10 miles and you charge $3.50 per mile, you can go ahead and add that to the ticket. And then you will essentially bill the customer for that too when you're billing them for the time spent on the ticket. Okay, Some other things that we have on the ticketing page, first of all, over here, you can edit the activity status again. You can also view the ticket activity history, so you can see who opened the ticket, who commented, who wrote an internal note, and so on. If there's an SLA, it will appear here. You can also change the ticket requester if necessary. If the device is online, you can remote into it. You can create a new calendar event. And over here, you can see a history of all this customers' tickets or all this contacts' tickets. So this is also a great way to really get some context into what they've been going through, see if there's any overarching issue. And here you can change all the ticket properties. So you can have the ticket as open, as on hold if you're still working on it, pending, resolved, or closed. Sometimes you may be pending when it's waiting for a customer's response, or resolved when it requires just another level of approval before closing it. And you can change all the other ticket properties over here at the bottom. Some other things that you can do is add in quick reply templates. This is a great time saver for anyone who's working with tickets. Really, just you can create these templates once off, and then at a click of a button, you can add them to the ticket. So again, if you have any frequently asked questions or any widespread issues, and you go ahead, you create the template, and all the information is just filled in the ticket at the click of a button. And at the bottom is where you can see the conversation history or the ticket history. The most recent response will always appear at the top, and the rest of the conversation will appear at the bottom. And the last thing that I want to show you is a cool feature that it's not so new anymore, but we're also doing a lot to improve it, and that is our AI auto tags. Now, this uses AI to understand what the ticket is about and assign a tag. And then at a later stage, you can create automations based on those tags. So again, if you don't want that, you can just remove the tag, or you can also add a customized tag if you want. Okay, so yeah, you can go ahead and update the ticket. Now, before we move on to billing, billing is really the next logical step. And I did say that we were going to get to reports at the end, but we do have one report which a lot of our customers are using as sort of an intermediate step between ticketing and billing. And I do want to show that to you now because it is something that you might find useful, and that is our timesheet report. Now, again, you can go ahead and filter either by the ticket resolve date or the time entry date. You can choose a time period, a certain customer or certain technician. We'll choose to display ticket rates and amounts, and we can go ahead and generate this report. And this report over here really gives you a good overview of all the tickets that have been opened in a certain time frame. So maybe you want to check this out once a month, the number of time entries and the hours worked. And it gives you a breakdown of each ticket, if the ticket was resolved, if the ticket was billable, has the ticket already been invoiced and included as part of when you've billed your customer. You can ensure, see how many hours that you've worked and how much money that would be worth. I think I did not select display ticket rates and amounts. So let's do that. And now you can see the amount that's associated with that ticket based on the time that was worked. So this is a great place to kind of get an overview of all the work that's been done before you start billing your customer. And of course, you can make any changes based on this. If you see, oh, I haven't closed that ticket, let me go back and close it. Something else should be included. This rate looks wrong. That's where you can make all the, you can see if you need to make any of these changes. So once you finalize that, we're going to go to billing. Now we're going to create a new invoice batch. And what you can do over here is select the different service items that you provided based on the different contracts. And we're going to save this batch. Let's call it Allo batch 2022. And you can really select whichever service items you want included. You're going to go ahead and run that invoice batch. Over here, you can see a breakdown of everything that's included. And then you can also choose if you want to generate 3 separate invoices for each different service provided, for each different contract. or you can merge it all into one invoice. So you select one invoice per customer. You can choose how you want to group the invoice lines. Then you go ahead and generate an invoice. And then you can export those invoices. Now we have three options as far as exporting them. If you have an existing license or an existing subscription with QuickBooks Online or Xero, you can export those directly to QuickBooks Online or to Xero and proceed with the rest of your billing from there. If you don't use either of those, you can also export this invoice as a general CSV. So those are your options over there. And we'll talk a little bit more about these integrations, but I will just show you what the invoice looks like. So if you go to billing, and you can see over here that what we just created is this new invoice. It's got an invoice number, and we can go in here and we really have all the information from those service items that were included. And you can make any changes if you want. You can change any of this information. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and save the invoice. And you can also choose if you want to email it, create it as a PDF, or print it. And that's really how you get your invoice. Now, as I mentioned, we do have some accounting integrations. At this stage, we have with QuickBooks Online and Xero if you have an existing account. I won't go into too much depth about that, but once we have a pretty deep integration, you're able to migrate any existing products and rates and expenses between the two systems. So if there's anything that you've created in QuickBooks or anything that you've created in Atera, you're able to migrate between the two platforms. Similarly with customers. And afterwards, then all your invoicing and your taxes and all your products and rates will be handled from QuickBooks or Xero once you have connected them. And at any point, you can disconnect them. Great. So I think that covers most of billing. Now, I want to show you some of the automations and customizations that you can do within Atera. So we're going to go to specifically related to ticketing. So we're going to go to admin and we'll go to custom fields. Now, there's a number of different things that you can do over here. First of all, we have custom fields for tickets, for customers, contacts, contracts, and so on. It's a great way to ensure that on all of these entities across Atera, you're able to personalize them to add any necessary information. I'm going to show you specifically for tickets, as that's probably most relevant to our PSA module. So the first thing that I want to show you is how you can customize your ticket statuses. Now, the 4 default statuses that we have are open, pending, resolved, and closed. I'm just going to exit these so you can see. And once I go ahead and I don't want to replace these with anything. Oh, I have to replace them with something. Okay, so anything that's on hold, we'll just treat it as open for now. Okay, so when I create a ticket, currently the statuses that I have available, let's go into tickets, sorry about that. And the statuses that I have available would be open, pending, resolved, or closed. But I can edit that under custom fields. So under statuses, I can go ahead and add any new values that I want. So for example, if I want one that is on hold, if I'm still waiting for an extra response from someone, I can add that. Maybe I have a status, as we saw earlier, which is escalated. So I can go ahead and add that as a custom status. So this really allows you to adapt Atera to your workflow and work with whichever ticket statuses you maybe are already used to if you're already using an existing solution. And you can really adapt these statuses to suit your needs. And you can also change the order of them, the order in which they appear, both over here and within the ticket itself. Other things that you can do is add much more customized fields. Now, there's a number of different uses for this. One example, which we've seen, especially with service providers who are working with perhaps a bigger team, is people who are using it to split their tickets up into technician tiers. Say that you have tier 1 technicians and tier 2 technicians, and you want to differentiate the tickets for each of them. So you can go ahead and add a field. In this case, the target will be the ticket. The type of field that we want to add, as you can see, you have a lot of different options. You can have text, you can have a number, a checkbox. We're going to create a drop down. And the title over here will be technician tier. You can choose if this is a mandatory field or not. So if every ticket requires this, and you can also choose if it's private or not. What does that mean? If a field is private, it means it will not be visible to the customer in the customer portal when they open a ticket. If it is not private, then it will be visible to them. And then over here, you can go ahead and add the values. So for example, tier 1, tier 2, and then you can add that. Now, when I try open a ticket, let's do it from an alert, it will be a little bit easier. I can go ahead and select the relevant technician. Let's select a contact. I can go ahead and select the relevant technician. And then as a tier 1 technician, I can go ahead and filter out the tickets that are relevant to me. So I can go to filters, custom fields, if you missed it, technician tier equals tier 1. And now I can go ahead and see all the tickets that have been assigned to me as a tier 1 technician. So again, that was just one use case for tickets in particular, but you can really play around with that to make sure that every ticket has the information that you need. You can use it to create automations. You can use it to create different filters and so on. Speaking of automations, I'll show you some ticket automation rules. So this is also something where there's a lot of customization. There's a lot of possibilities here. There's an example which I usually give, which is a situation in which a technician is, you have your business hours, you've set up your working hours, and a customer opens up a ticket for you, but it's outside of your regular business hours. And you want to tell them that you've received their ticket and you will deal with it, but you'll deal with it when you're working again. So maybe you want to send that to them as an email. So we're going to set up a rule for this. So first you click add a new rule. The rule name will be out of business hours. We'll add the same description. The trigger in this case will be that a new ticket has been created. Now, as you can see, you can have a number of different triggers, and based on those different triggers, you can create different automations. So we will look at some examples afterwards. You can also choose if this rule ignores the flow. What does that mean? As you can see, we have a number of different rules, and these are always implemented in descending order. So if you're clicking ignore flow, what you're saying is never mind this order here, never mind this hierarchy. This is the rule that should be implemented. And then at any point, you can choose if this rule is active or not. So we're going to go ahead and click add. And now what you can see is that we have to set up conditions and actions. So the trigger that we have is that a new ticket has been created. And now we're going to set up the conditions. So as we mentioned earlier, a ticket was created outside of our regular business hours. So in this case, the event trigger time, meaning the time that the new ticket was created, isn't on the calendar. And the calendar that we're putting is our today's business hours, the ones we created earlier. But there's more conditions that we have. We're speaking about a situation where a customer on their end opened a ticket up for us. We're not speaking about a situation where I, as a technician, opened up a ticket on behalf of the customer, because obviously I won't send them a follow-up email telling them that it's outside of my business hours if I open that ticket for them. So the conditions that I'm going to add here is that the source of the ticket is not phone, meaning it was not manually opened by me. Phone refers to a manually opened ticket. And in addition to that, the source of the ticket not equals an alert, meaning this ticket was not automatically generated from an alert. So let me just review that quickly. A ticket was created outside of the regular business hours that we've defined. This ticket was not created manually by the technician. This ticket was not automatically generated from an alert, meaning this ticket was opened by the customer themselves. And so the action that we want to do is to send an email to that contact that opened the ticket. And then we can go ahead and create the template. And the template that we've created previously is something called after hours, where we explain our business hours. Maybe we give them an emergency number to get hold of us. Really, that's according to your needs. So that's just one example of an automation that you can create. But again, with different triggers and different conditions, there's so much more that you can do. If you have any certain tickets, maybe you want to create some automations for high priority tickets. So any ticket title which contains the word server down, you can set it as high priority and assign it to a certain technician. And that's one example that we have over here. You can also, every time a ticket status changes to closed, you can send a customer satisfaction survey to the contact that opened the ticket. Really, there's just a lot that you can do with this. You can play around with this. And if you have any ideas, of course, share them. But really, it's just a great way to work a little bit more automatically and to streamline your workflow and to really ensure that your ticketing is well organized. Okay, now we don't have much time left. So there are a few more things that I want to show you. First of all, I want to show you where you can find all the settings related to ticketing, everything that you can configure. So under admin settings, tickets. First of all, over here is where you can configure whether a ticket timer will start automatically, whether a ticket timer will only start manually when you select it, or whether a ticket timer will be hidden from a ticket altogether. We saw earlier when we opened a ticket, the timer automatically started. But again, that's just because I have it configured like that. You can also decide if you want to enable or disable the auto tagging on tickets. You can also decide what the behavior will be when a ticket is closed, whether time entries are billable. You can also define the ticket rounding. So if you're not measuring your customer by the second, if you're not charging your customer by the second, then you can round up to the nearest hour or to the nearest half hour. You can choose if the default response type is public reply or internal note, meaning every time you open a ticket, by default, the response could be an internal note if you don't want to accidentally respond to the customer, or if you always respond to your customer, then you can make it a public reply. You can choose the ticket ID sequence and reset it at any point. And you can also choose which tickets can be viewed on the customer portal based on their status. A few other things that you can do. First of all is white labeling or branding. You can add your logo and color to set up in Atera and in the customer portal. You can also add your company icon. This will appear both on the help desk agent and also as the favicon in the customer portal. And you can add your logo for reports and invoices. Something else that you can do, I'll show you where you can set up your quick reply and email templates. Quick reply templates, we saw those are what you can use in tickets to answer quickly. So you can set those up over here. You can also set up email templates. And these can be used for ticket automations or for any automations relating to having to email your customers automatically. I'll just show you what they look like and what you can do with them. So say, for example, we have an after hours one. This is, for example, we're out of office, but we got your ticket. So, hey, and then you can add in a snippet over here, which is the contact first name. And that will automatically fill in their first name of the contact that opened the ticket. And then you have the rest of the information. And at any point, you can add a snippet. Now, again, you can use this for any point of an automation. What we also have the possibility to do under email templates is to inject any HTML code. So if you're using any HTML-based tools or have anything HTML-based within your emails, you can add that in the email templates. Another thing that you can do under your profile, so you go to My Profile. Over here, you can add your picture. You can select your preferred language, your phone number, and also a ticket signature if you want. Great. So I think that covered most of the different things that you can customize and where you can set everything up. The last few moments, I'll just show you some of the reports that we have. I'll show you mainly the ones that are relevant to PSA. So if you go to reports, Of course, I think one of the most important reports in any customer-facing role is customer satisfaction. So you can go ahead and select the relevant time period. Let's go far back. Let's go about a year back and apply that. For 5 customers, we can choose more if we want. We can go ahead and generate this report. Oh, I did not go far back enough. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and apply that. Okay, sorry, there seems to be a little bit of a bug. So let's do the last 120 days. And we can generate a report and we can see the customer satisfaction rating of all of the tickets that we've opened over there. For all of our reports, in addition to that, you can choose to schedule them at a later stage and maybe be sent to a specific technician on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. And for all of our reports, you can also export them to an Excel or to a PDF. Another report that we have is our, well, we saw our timesheet report already. I'll show you just our general report. Let's go ahead and generate that for the last month. And over here, I can really just give you, for the time period that you choose, a breakdown of where the different tickets are coming from. There's also customer rank within Atera, so you can see the breakdown of that, the tickets by product and the tickets by type. Another report that I want to show you is our load analysis report. Let's also choose a bit of a longer time frame for all customers. We can go ahead and generate that report. And over here, we can see really over time how our service level is improving, how many tickets we have in our backlog compared to how many we have which are open or closed. So in an ideal world, we want to see that blue line going down and the red line going up. So you can really just get an overview of what your load is like. And we can also see the average number of tickets by time of arrival. So this could just be interesting to know where to put your resources. Maybe if you're thinking of bringing in someone else part-time, you know, which times you're getting the most tickets. So that can really also help you with just planning your workflow. Another report, now one more report that I'll show you before we end off is our top load report. So we can go ahead over here and choose a time period, and we can really see a breakdown here over the time period that we selected, how many tickets we had altogether, and really where are our resources going. So of all the tickets that we had, how many of them were for each customer, how much time we spent on each of their tickets, how much support they received, how many tickets. So really it's a great way to just understand where you're putting your resources. And then we have a few other reports which may be relevant. We have a technician comparison report, which you can see how many, for those of you who have a bigger team, you can see how many of your, how many tickets each of your technicians are answering and how long it's taking them. So really that can help you just track their work a little bit more. Okay, now I know that was a lot. We are going to go into our Q&A. I see we already have a question. But before we do, I just want to make you aware of some of the resources we have available, and then I'll get to the Q&A. We have a very comprehensive knowledge base, very up to date, with a lot of information about all of our features, PSA, and everything else. We also have a very interesting and up-to-date blog with a lot of relevant content for MSPs, for IT professionals. We have recordings of some of our previous webinars. We also, in addition, have other webinars. As I mentioned, we have a RMM walk training, which goes kind of hand in hand with this. We also have webinars specifically for network discovery, specifically for patching, patch management, IT automation profiles. We also have a webinar which delves a little bit more into depth with ticketing, although I must say we did cover a lot of it today. And we also have a webinar which goes more in depth with billing. If you need support, we always have our live chat available. You can reach that from within the platform. I'll just show you exactly where. If you click on the question mark and start a live chat. And then, of course, we have our We have our support team who you can always reach by email at support@atera.com. I'll put my camera back on now, just to be a little bit more live and with you guys. And any one of our webinars, you can sign up for them on our website where you signed up for this one, or you can just search Atera webinars. Great. Now let's dive into our live Q&A. This is a great time to post any questions that you have. We have a question where someone asked if it's possible to print the SLA. I'm not sure I understand what you mean when you mean print it. If you're talking about like exporting it directly from that page, it's not possible. But if you can just maybe clarify exactly what you mean, I can try answer a little bit more directly. But in general, everything related to the SLA can be found under admin, SLA, and then you can again go ahead and create an SLA. And based on the SLA, like you can decide the impact. Each SLA has an impact associated with it. Let's go ahead and create a new one. That might be easier. So you can choose the name. You can select which hour, which calendar it's associated with. You can add a description and notes. And then you can define the SLA for each of these different scenarios. So if it's a no impact situation, your first response should be within, let's say 24 hours. Hours, and so on. How long is the first response, and then how long to close the ticket. Okay, so the question is, can we see a summary of the SLA that we can send to the customer? On the ticket itself, the closest thing I can think of is under reports. We have a service level agreement report, and you can go ahead and select a certain customer for a certain time frame. And then you can see over here a summary of how many of the tickets were answered on time and how many of them exceeded the SLA. And it also over here it says by how long it exceeded the SLA. So we do have a report over there, and then you can go ahead and send that to the customer. You can go ahead and schedule that and send it to a certain contact and choose which contact it is. But yeah, back to the report, they can see for the specific customer, how many tickets, how many were responded and closed, how many were responded within the SLA and closed within the SLA, and how many met the SLA. Are there any other questions? If anyone thinks of a question at a later stage, you're always free to reach out to our support team with any technical questions or product questions, and they'll be able to help you further. Great. So I think that's it for now. I'll wait 1 more minute. I'll stop sharing my screen. If anyone else thinks of a question, feel free to write it. And if not, thank you all for joining us. Please, we're really waiting to see you at our other events and sessions and trainings. We have a Q&A coming up. So if you use the platform a bit more and you want to come just ask a bunch of questions, that's also great. We'll post that soon. So again, thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.